Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. Today we're going to take advantage of this snowfall and we're going to procure drinking water from the snow and the ice that's everywhere. Stick around, I'm going to walk you through it. Now, one of the things I was wanting to do while I was out was to demonstrate how to procure drinking water from snow. You know, you may think it's a no-brainer, well, you just melt it. Well, yeah. Have you ever tried melting snow? Have you ever tried melting ice? Have you ever tried to melt it and boil it in order to make hot beverages from it? If you've never tried it, believe it or not, it's not as easy as it sounds, and you wind up using a lot more fuel for your fire and melting down the snow and the ice and boiling it for either sanitation purposes or to make hot beverages or reconstitute mountain house meals than you would if you were to just take cold water from the stream and do the same thing. It's a longer process than what you may think, and again, it uses more fuel. One of the first things I need to do is to get my cook pot and stove ready to do the job. And as I'm doing this is another one of those little quick tips about cold weather. I'm going to be taking this backpack off of me, and I've been wearing it all day and my back is soaked. Now, in the extreme cold that we're in, it's 23 degrees and we have a decent amount of wind chill, so the felt air temperature is probably about 17. I need to pay attention to my body, but like I did in another video, I talked about dealing with the cold. Before I start pulling out my outer layers for insulation, I want my clothing, I have a fleece, it would be a mid layer, and I have a base layer. I want for my body temperature to heat my clothing up enough to where it's going to evaporate and get rid of most of that moisture. When my skin really starts feeling uncomfortable and I sort of get that chilling feeling, as soon as that starts happening, then I'll pull out my outer layer and put it on loosely and gradually allow my body to acclimate back to the temperature with dry base layers on. But first, I'm going to go ahead and get my cook pot out and we'll get started. Another thing you want to keep an eye on is right now, because of the air temperature and the wind chill, the snow is dry. It's dry. So when it piles up on your backpack and your other gear and equipment, you can brush that off. It's not going to soak through because your gear is the same temperature as the rest of this. My fleece, however, it's warmer, so as this comes down, it's going to accumulate on my fleece and it will melt. Right now it's very insignificant, and I think my body temperature is going to be able to evaporate that moisture at a decent enough rate. If it were becoming down heavier or the air temperature were to be warmer, and the snow coming down with big wet flakes, I would definitely be putting on my soft shell right now to and keep it loose, just to keep that moisture from accumulating on my clothing. Now, I'm using my Solo Stove Titan for this little experiment or demonstration, and first thing I'm going to be concerning myself with is the cook pot. Take the stove out, and since it has snowed so much in such a short period of time, I'm not worrying a whole lot about taking off little teeny tiny layers of the snow and taking it real slow to prevent debris and foliage and things like that from getting in my cook pot mixed in with the snow. Believe me, it snowed a lot in the past couple days. There hasn't been a whole lot of time for anything to be worked up into it. There's also a layer of ice just an inch or so below this layer of snow, and there's about 8 inches of snow under that. So as I'm scooping this up, I'm not fearful of what's going to be in it. You know, who knows? Yeah, maybe during the snowfall there was a bird flew by and pooped in it. Shucky darn, you know, a little nitrogen in your system, oh well. But as you can see, listen to that. That is the ice layer that what came down first. And this right here is just off that first couple scoops. I'm going to get as much of this loose stuff as I can and pack that in. And I'm not going to pack it. This is fairly light snow, fluffy snow anyway. Now, this right here is actually only going to wind up being about 1/5 the amount of volume in this particular pot. So as we're going through this process, I'm going to continually be adding more. Now I've got this ice layer here. I'm going to avoid putting the ice in because it actually takes longer for the ice to melt and to the point to where you can boil it. And that's my overall goal today, is to boil this snow. Well folks, I've gone ahead and set up my stove, my solo stove, and I'm using the wood pellets with the sterno gel. And I want to show you what I'm doing with that. Now I literally just lit it. One thing that I did notice with using the sterno gel this time versus the last time that I used it is that it actually was more difficult for it to actually combust. And now that it has been burning for, I'd say about a minute, minute and a half, you're starting to see a little bit more of it ignite. But I believe it's an alcohol base. Maybe that has something to do with it. If you are planning on using this type of sterno gel in the winter months, just keep that in mind, that it does take a little bit more to light. I had to scoop some of it up on some twigs and light it that way and put it down. Whereas before, like in the summer months, all I have to do is touch my lighter to it and it, you know, lights right up. Now, this will get very, very warm very quickly. And I want to be able to have a tremendous amount of heat to melt this snow. And if I were to be cooking, I would definitely be going around and getting some twigs and things like that to use for my cooking fire. And but for just boiling water, I think that the wood pellets are absolutely fantastic. And when you look at the cost of solid fuel tabs, you look at the cost of isobutane, butane, all of these other things that are out there, it's very, very inexpensive as far as a man-made fuel source. Now, this stove was designed for twigs. I know that, and it works great with that, and I use it for that. But when you want to have surefire fire, you want to have surefire fuel, this is a very inexpensive alternative to be able, you know, to have that with a wood gasification stove. I have the stove set up. I am utilizing the wood pellets that I've used in the past, and the reason I'm using those is it will get the temperature very, very hot and maintain that heat for quite a long time. So that means I'm not constantly having to load in the twigs to melt the snow. I'm putting the lid on because any bit of heat that's generated, I want it locked in there. And this takes a long time. Even when you have a very substantial campfire going, which if you've noticed, I rarely have a campfire, but when I do have it, I do enjoy it. But even when you're using a campfire and you're using a tripod and you're suspending your vessel filled with snow and ice over the fire, and it could be a fairly substantial fire, really think about how much time it's taking that snow to melt. What's pretty much going to happen, I'll show you some pictures along the way, is all of this snow that's in the bottom it's going to melt first. And a lot of the snow up toward the top is going to stay clumped up there. And the steam that's being generated by the water underneath is really what's going to start melting the rest of the snow. And when it gets down in there, you're going to see the slushy snowball sort of floating in the middle, and it's going to seem so stubborn. It just looks like it's going to sit there for forever and not change size. It is melting, it just doesn't appear so because all of that ice is like an iceberg and it's floating up toward the surface. That's what you're seeing. So as it starts to melt, it's not melting all the way down, it's also melting and changing its shape. So even though you think it's not melting, it is. But it is going to take quite a while to do that. Already I can see that the wood pellets are gasifying, and there's pumping out some of those fuel jets in there. I don't have too much of a breeze right now, so I'm not going to pull out the windshield at the moment. But if it does, I have that available to me. That's a fantastic, super lightweight tool that really has come in tremendously handy on occasions when I've been out trying to cook some food, get a fire going, what have you. But something you might want to consider adding to your cooking kit or your stove kit. And even if it's a homemade variation that you're using, heavy-duty aluminum foil, one of those baking pans, the foil baking pans, something like that to use as a windshield, definitely worth considering adding a windshield to your stove kit. Now, you saw the amount of snow that I put in this pot. And I told you that there was only going to be maybe a fifth or so that's actually going to be water out of that. Look how much snow is in the pot right now. So my estimates were off quite a bit. That's probably about 1/10 of the volume that it was filled with. Now what I need to do is I need to get some type of a container, or I can use my hands if I wanted to. If I wanted to get my gloves wet, I'd use my hands to scoop up snow and put in a cook pot. However, all of the items I have as far as containers go are metal, and the snow is going to stick to that because of the extreme temperatures. However, I happen to have with me for another video I was going to be shooting the plastic canteen cup for the Crusader canteen system that the British military uses. That's going to be the perfect thing to do the job. It's a large capacity and it's plastic, so I don't have to worry about the snow accumulating and sticking on the metal. Now we've got some excellent heat melting that snow that was in there. I'm going to need to be refilling that pot constantly with snow to constantly keep up on that melting process. I'm using my Crusader canteen cup from the British military Crusader cook system and canteen system, which works absolutely fantastic because it's plastic, and in these temperatures, if you have anything that's remotely wet, it's going to freeze to it and stick. And if I was using a metal canteen cup, it would be eventually sticking to the snow, just like my cook pot did when I first filled it up. So I'm just going to continue to fill up my cup, put it inside my cook pot, and I will be monitoring that as we go. And when we finally get enough water melted down that's going to be sufficient to make a mountain house meal or a beverage or something like that, or for that matter just being able to boil enough water to fill a stainless steel Nalgene bottle, which would be 1 liter. I can put it in there and use it as a hand warmer or a warming system for, like, if I was hammock camping. I could boil that water, put it in stainless steel Nalgene bottle, put it in a sock. That way I'm not burning my skin directly, and I can put that in my sleeping bag in my hammock, and it's nice and toasty. Let's see how fast this boils down. Whoop, started to lose my stove. Oh, there with my water. Well, like I said, I have had all kinds of issues trying to film past 2 or 3 times come out. my stove just slid off the log I had it resting on. I lost whatever water I had boiled as it is, but being a solo stove, I was able to go ahead and pick it up and move the stove without burning myself, so I still have fire. Now I have to start all over again as far as melting that snow goes. I'll bring you back when I get things situated. This is where I relocated the stove, and now it's not going to fall off anything, and the water that I have melted is going to be staying in the cook pot. I'm going to go ahead and continue adding snow, just as I described before with my canteen cup. And as it melts away, I'm going to be adding more, and I will bring you back as soon as I have a substantial amount of water melted. Now I'm going to show you exactly how quickly that snow turns into water. I literally just filled this up. Well, actually, it was mounted above and I put the lid on. And it's real slushy there toward the bottom. Matter of fact, it's so cold at the top from the snow that the snow is still sticking. Just like, snow does to a metal snow shovel when you're trying to shovel it. And go ahead and add, excuse me, add just a little more snow. And push that down. And I'll bring you back in about 1 minute so you can see exactly how much that has melted. Now it's been exactly 1 minute. Let's see how much is melted in 1 minute. If you remember right, the big blob of canteen cup snow was in there, and we are coming right along. I'd say just a few more canteen cups and we will have a very substantial amount of water that we can use for whatever we so desire. One thing I do want to point out, if you have to use your solo stove on the ground in the snow like this, make certain that these lower vents are exposed, because if not, there's no airflow, so you don't get the wood gasification, and which is very, very important. The water's coming along pretty well. I want to show you what it looks like. You can see those bubbles starting to form a little bit on the bottom. That's a substantial amount of water, and it's almost 2 liters that's in there. And I lost count, but I was 20 plus cups of snow scooping in there, in addition to what I originally scooped up into it. Again, when the cook pot went off the side almost with the stove, it sort of threw me off. But it takes a tremendous amount of snow to be melted into water. I'm certain there's a formula. If there is, I'll put that in the description box, and so that way you can see for yourself how much snow you will need for X amount of ounces of water or liters of water. I just wanted to share this with you real quick. We have a significant amount of snowfall out here right now. I'd say anywhere between 8 to 10 inches. And, we have layers of ice incorporated with that. So we have a very well insulated forest floor right now. But here we see a bunch of exposed leaves. These exposed leaves are here because they're being warmed by geothermal forces in the form of water. This is a sign of a freshwater spring in the winter. Now, of course, we have tons and tons and tons of water potential here in the form of snow and ice. However, if you did not have the means by which to melt ice, if I were to literally stomp in here, dig around with my feet just a little bit, my knife or what have you, I could produce a puddle of this spring water that we could actually use to drink. Just for the point of size comparison, this area that's been exposed by the spring water bubbling up forth, that area is about 3.5 to 4 feet long. And it's just a few little pockets, but when you look at all of the other forest floor, it's completely covered by at least 8 to 10 inches of snow. This is not. As you can see, those jets are really firing. That those wood pellets have really gasified and sending a tremendous amount of heat there. Another thing I wanted to point out, now a lot of stoves, you have to be very careful where you place them because they generate a tremendous amount of heat. Sometimes you have stoves where you literally cannot put anything that's flammable near them or under them. Look at this stove. It is so cool because of the way it's designed that the metal is not melting the snow. Now, I'm touching this with my bare hand. A little warm there, but where those vents are, it is not anything other than warm. That is a significant sales feature, I think. Water has definitely come to a rolling boil. It took a little over 20 minutes to be able to melt that water down and to get it to a boil. The amount of heat that I had going through that solo stove, had it even been cold water from the creek, which very easily could have been almost at a freezing temperature, but it wasn't freezing because it was in motion, it would have taken substantially less amount of time than that with that particular stove with that amount of heat. Using the wood pellets with this Solo Stove Titan, it can generate about the same amount of heat that you can with an isobutane stove. Not quite to the intensity, but it's very, very hot. Now, had I been using a Whisper Light or a Pocket Rocket or something like that, maybe I could have gotten the water to boil faster. However, it would have used a substantial amount of fuel compared to just trying to boil water. You had to convert that ice and snow into water, then you had to get it hot enough to boil. That is a tremendous amount of fuel expenditure. When you're looking at the dollar signs, when you're using the wood pellets, you can get a huge bag of them, 50-pound bag, for just a few bucks. And as opposed to the amount that you pay for a small isobutane cylinder, or for that matter, even when you're using heat tabs, solid fuel tabs, they aren't free. And the amount of fuel tabs it would have taken me to boil that amount of water, I would have been going through probably 2 complete packages, and that would have been about $8. So the wood pellets work out fantastic for it, did a great job. Now it's time to enjoy a nice cup of joe. Since you already have it out, I'm going to be using the plastic canteen cup that comes with the Crusader canteen, 1 liter canteen that the British military uses. The best thing about this, it's plastic. It's not going to burn my lips when I go to drink it. Now granted, I could be using my insulated coffee cup, but this is already out. It'll definitely do the job. Well folks, hope you enjoyed today's video. I definitely enjoyed putting it together, and An excuse to be outside and have a good cup of joe is always good with me. I hope you got something out of it as far as having a realization of what all goes into melting snow or ice into usable water, that it does wind up taking a lot more time and uses a lot more fuel than what you may anticipate. If you've not done it before, next time you're in a situation to where you can go out wild camping in the snow, give it a try, even if you don't have to, just to have that bit of experience. The one thing you will notice is that water that has been melted from snow tastes a little different. I don't exactly know the science behind that, but it does, especially ice. I've noticed that water from ice tastes a little more different than the snow. And all three have their unique flavor, but all of which are absolutely 100% essential when you need it. And just a couple things I wanted to throw in there to let you think about as far as the whole melting snow for water procurement goes. And other than that, I mean, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like today's video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you like what you see and you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Click the notification bell. And by all means, you have anything to share, anything to say about what you've seen today. Maybe there's some tricks and tips that you'd like to add from for the video that I didn't know or didn't add. And all the other viewers would appreciate that, I'm sure, and I would definitely appreciate your comments. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.